Are we live? We ready? Hey everybody, we're getting ready to start. Simmer down, simmer down. I know you can, but I mean that's great. Foss, simmer down.
He said simmer down.
Simmer down now. Welcome everybody. Welcome anybody that's watching online. As we just come, hey. You are at the IGDA Twin Cities chapter, special interest group for VR and HCI. Welcome. Who's never been here before?
This specific location, no. But I've been to meetings at the old one.
Yep. And I don't recall, have you been to the meeting at the old spot?
Nope.
How'd you find us?
Well, I go to the game dev.
Perfect. Well, welcome. And I'm already ahead of myself. That's on the next slide. Oh, it's a Mac. Good God. That's right. I got to physically click, don't I? Yep. Why is it so hard, Matt? Okay. So here's our order of operations. Pretty simple. And for those that are new to this location, afterwards we're going to walk about 15 feet that direction to the restaurant and bar. Especially if we do outdoors, you can kind of get somebody to get a table outside and just beeline it and never go in the building. We want to be safe and open to everybody, so if you have any issues, get in touch with one of the organizers here or on Discord or on email, which is right there at the bottom of every slide. And we're all volunteer. There's our board. And even better, here's our volunteers, where you'll find David and myself. If you're interested in getting involved with the group, just hop on the volunteer channel on our Discord or email us if you get ideas. If you just don't have ideas but you want to help out, we like both. All right, I'm getting used to this Mac touchpad. Here's our regular schedule. We've taken over all the Wednesdays now. Our newest event is called Jam Night. Who wants to speak to Jam Night?
Jam night, it's kind of a co-working type thing. That's about it. One rule of jam night is you have to bring something to work on. So you bring something to work on, art, code, something, whatever, and then you also chat about it. And sometimes you get stuff done. Sometimes you just
Yep.
Presentation format? Like
Yeah,
you have to go out and you get your 3 minutes and you have to talk?
no, it's
You have to fight.
Sit down with your
Yep.
laptop or whatever and work on it, chat. It's pretty chill.
See, as long as you look like you're working on something.
Yeah. We're not really enforcing the rule. It's just, you should
Show us your progress. All right, that's enough about Jam Night. Second Wednesday game dev meeting, our long-running thing, is now at 2DHQ, which is fairly recent. I think this will be the third or fourth one coming up. And it's roughly Roseville. Where is it?
2DHQ.
Yeah,
It's pretty close to Novara, but it's like northeast a couple miles.
just a little bit more.
And I'm doing next month's
Oh, what are you talking about?
Mega Games.
Cool.
What? Is it gonna be any good? If you have questions, come to.
Mega Games, like games but bigger. Twin Cities Playtest, third Wednesday, bringing an in-progress game, board game, video game obviously, and in theory VR game. I don't think that's happened yet. And finally, the best event, you are at it, fourth Wednesday, REM 5 Studios. Let's actually hear it for him for hosting us. Thanks, Brad. And once again, ahead of myself, sponsors, click. Sponsors. We already thanked them. But here's, oh man, somebody hid that slide. Good thing. Hey.
Game.lab. Unintentional game.wave. I'll probably be talking at the next one.
Okay.
About math every game dev, audio math every game dev should know.
Oh yeah. Is it moving or not moving?
Not as far as I know.
Okay.
Not yet. There's been talk about changing the date, but not the location.
Gotcha. And I think that was on our, yeah, I missed the right half of this slide. game.wave, it was only funny to mock people that can pronounce wave for 2 months. At Hempel Tech, which is in Eden Prairie, so we don't have to discuss it at all. Nobody needs to say anything. Hennepin Tech's in Eden Prairie, right by the mall, pretty close. And the Women in Games Gathering is on a Saturday, actually, third Saturday at Noble Robot. Okay, so that's it for our regular slides. Quick reminder that we're an official 501c3 nonprofit, so you got any of them corporate folks that like tax deductions, tell them they should donate or do it yourself. And that's all run through the Nice Games Alliance, which is just kind of an entity to do that and to fund IGDA activities, website hosting, get-togethers, things like that. Backwards scrolling on the Mac and clicking. Community plugs. We don't have any official slides, but does anybody want to step up and do a quick shout out of something they're working on or anything like that? Anybody? Anybody?
You're really pointing at me.
Uh-huh.
Shout out my game real quick. You want to pull up the website?
Yes, sir. Click.
Blossom Blaster.
I'm wondering if your shirt said
You
Velocity
got
Blast.
the other URL?
Yeah, I do. It will redirect.
There it is.
All right, yeah. So
Talking to the mic.
I gave a presentation. Oh yeah, mic for the stream. Yeah. I gave a presentation last month, so a lot of you probably already know about this, but I'm working on a VR game called Velociblaster. It's a multiplayer VR game where you are a sentient raptor wielding high-tech blaster cannons, and you can fly in outer space with rocket thrusters. It is a deathmatch style game, and it is currently in alpha, but it's an open alpha. So if anyone wants to play it, just join our Discord via this big get the free alpha on Discord button, and you can install it on your Quest. It's really easy. Thanks.
Or PCVR.
Or PCVR, Steam. Yeah.
That is a super
Have you seen
specific call to
Velocipaster?
action.
Yeah, I have.
You need to hook up with them a little
I
bit.
know. Thinking about the cross-promotion opportunities there.
So a thing that we've been talking about for a while is having like flyers and cards we can give out to people. So like everyone, if you've ever been in this situation where you're like talking to someone and they're like, oh, they should know about IGDA, and you can try and be like IGDA.org, and they're like, oh, maybe I'll put it on my phone. We have cards, like everyone can stick like one or two of them in their wallet, and if it's when you talk to someone, you can just hand one out. So everyone should take like one or two of these.
Sweet.
All right. Last call. Plugs. Going, gone. Quick. All right. Well, without further ado, let's turn the floor over to our main presenter, Matt Summers. Let's hear for him.
Yo. So, I did a thing, and I don't know, anyone who's familiar with me knows that I've been a Unity developer for like a million years, and I have a slide dedicated to this, and we'll commiserate on our opinions, but basically, as a result of Unity's decisions, I became an Unreal developer, basically. And my talk here is just to kind of walk through some of the things I went through and where our project is at. I'm using a project to actually be the catalyst for learning. So it's been about 2-ish years of starting from, basically limited use of Unreal Engine at all, and with 20 plus years of experience in Unity, converting everything over and figuring out how to do everything the Unreal way versus the Unity way. So the project is called Oro Into the Light, and it's a collaboration between, by the way, I'm Matt Summers. I work at Pixel Farm, and we have a new studio that we created called Triple Goat Games. So that's who's producing Into the Light, and Triple Goat Games is the four of us. Bjorn Hurry, who is our illustrator, animator. Thomas, who is a senior 3D modeler, project manager. They both have experience in AAA space, so Bjorn's done like concept art for Dishonored and God of War and the recent Diablo remake and all those kind of things. He's actually based out of Latvia, so he's a Swedish dude, but he lives in Latvia and his studio is there, where he does contract work for the game industry. Thomas is also, he's a primarily freelance, but he works various contracts. He's worked with like Tender Claws, he's worked with Disney. He had a stint at Meta where he was working on the AR glasses content for the last event where they showed off the Meta AR glasses. I'm primarily in like agency space, so I work with mostly like, brands like, Target and Medtronic and Best Buy and things like that. So Pixel Farm does a lot of commercial work primarily. I'm on the software development side of things, and so just it all depends on what gets thrown into the mix for stuff. And then Aaron is actually a freelancer also, and he's a character artist. So he's been taking all of Bjorn's art, making it all real 3D, and we'll go through some of that stuff here. On our website, there's bios of everyone. If you're bored and you want to go to our website and take a look at things, that's Bjorn and Thomas. And so what we're going to talk about is Into the Light, which is our first foray into a VR dungeon crawler that we're building. And again, focus on Unreal Engine as the development platform. So.
How'd you find those international people?
So I've known Thomas for a while. He's been in the Unity space for a long time. He had like his own magazine that he was producing for Unity, and for also I think Cinema 4D. And Bjorn is good friends with Thomas, so it was just like, and then actually Aaron is Thomas's son, so it's like this weird, trail of people that all just kind of got thrown together and through knowing each other basically. So Oro is the world that this game takes place in, and that was created by Bjorn. And there was a recent Kickstarter that he did for this art book, and I forgot it. I do have a printed copy of it. I was going to bring it, but it's basically a two-sided book. If you flip it, one side to the light, one side to the dark, and it has just like lore and characters and stuff in it. It's an art book that he did with all of his various concept art for this space. So I think he's got 3 Kickstarters he's done for art books. The first one was Abominations, and then the current one is Clans. That one has not shipped yet. It's going to ship probably, I don't know, in the next month or so. But so he's, all the art basically is from Bjorn. And this is all stuff from the Oro book. So we're basically taking this content and weaving it into our game. So it's a 5-player multiplayer game, focused on VR. It's slow pace. I have a slide that goes over some more of the details, but think more like Half-Life Alyx, except multiplayer with RPG progression. So it's basically like curated experiences that you move through, rather than just like crazy fast pace, anything. So just quickly, like there's just some work that on the characters. So everything's basically traditional 3D content. So it's all sculpted in ZBrush, 3D coat, retopoed, and then brought into Maya. So we have Mage, Thief, Ranger, Paladin, which originally started out as a warrior, but we switched it to Paladin because we needed a healing class, and melee in VR is sometimes not the greatest, so we were trying to focus on strengths. So that was, yeah. And then our 5th class is Bard, and we kind of have a neat gameplay mechanics based on the Bard, and so all of the music in the game is basically by bards. So if you hear music, it's because there's either an enemy bard or a NPC bard in the vicinity, or you're the bard and you're playing the music. So just it was kind of a way to just make music fit in the space without being weird, like you're just entering a space and there's odd music like that. And so in the VR space, so this is the first test of like having all 5 of the characters in VR. My character controller is a little different than normal IK rigs, and so it does a thing where the full body is animated and you can toggle on and off IK of the hands. So you can basically, when you walk, you get full animation on the body, and you don't get like hands that just go like this all the time as people are moving around. And you can just basically use a grip to grab things, and it will then instantly turn on IK so that you have control of the hands whenever you want. It also allows to mix animation-based interactions, attacks, things like that. So you can actually block something because the hand will actually stop. Because we can basically blend in between full IK control and control by animation. So we can have it so like if 2 swords hit, your sword will stop basically, and you just lose control of the hand for that moment, and then it'll transition back in or whenever. So this is just basically walking through, just walking up to each of the characters, and then you can take control of them. And then you can see like from that perspective, controlling that character, what it looks like from first person view or VR view.
So, is there going to be a lot of, are the characters basically done, or is there a lot of customization for them?
So the characters in this so far, they were originally built for Quest. We have since decided to focus on PC VR instead, just because we are a small team, and doing all the optimizations to get all this to work on a mobile device is a challenge. And so we wanted to just focus on having unlimited power and making something awesome rather than trying to make something that works on the limited power that's available on a mobile headset.
You know what I mean? Like, are the character models what the characters look like, or is there a lot of customization? Because that's always like the big thing, like every project.
Yeah, so currently the characters are modeled in their clothing and their attire. So there's just one character. That is how it's going to be probably for our initial release of our playable demo. Just from the standpoint that it's so much work to make hundreds of outfits and customizable things. So weapons will be, we have sockets so you can add like gems and pendants and things like that that are just kind of on the surface of your character. We might have color skins or something like that so you can customize the look a bit. But we kind of have like a palette that we've chosen for the characters also, so that, when you look at someone, exactly, like the mage is always in purple, for example, and the paladins is usually in red.
Are there 5 or 10?
There's 5. So there's 5, but there's a male and female version of each. Yeah. So, but they're effectively the same.
Right.
They're just, yeah. And currently we only have the male characters built because we're just trying to get everything working, and again, just picking and choosing what's the most important thing to get ready. So just from our core concepts of what this game is, it's basically taking all the lore and the creatures from Bjorn's world, Oro. Again, it's slow-paced, atmospheric exploration, Half-Life Alyx with RPG progression, multiplayer basically, Half-Life Alyx. PC VR first, possibly only. We did start on Quest, and we have functional things that work on Quest, but as you know, as you add things, you have to balance out all the resources, and so just that, the end goal of making sure all the features we want are in there is just more of a challenge on lower powered hardware. So we're going with the build it, enable by hardware to play it model. Like if it's good enough that people want to play it, people spent thousands of dollars to play Half-Life Alyx. They bought headsets and computers and things like that, and so it's a bar that is hard, and you're gonna lose the advantage of having just the massive amounts of mobile headsets that are out there. But I think there's headaches that are caused by mass use too, so we're kind of just having a smaller audience to start with. I think is to our benefit in our use case.
Also feels like a genre that's not what the Quest kids want
Yeah.
for the most part.
Like my daughter basically is constantly in I Am Cat, and all I hear every day is her herding little cats in her little space all the time, and I have to assume that there's a lot of quests that are doing that at the same time. So,
Use something as big as Half-Life Alyx as inspiration, and then adding multiplayer and RPG classes to it. It sounds really ambitious for a small indie team.
it is. I won't.
Herding cats.
What's that?
Have you added herding cats?
I have not had it herding cats yet, but it will. It's on the list of things.
At least the birds gotta go for rats.
Yeah.
Oh. Overskate.
It's heavily team-based, and it's designed so that each role has a specialty, and it requires communication between the classes to do things. So, like, a rogue can see traps, and he has to inform the other people and/or disarm them, or not, at his discretion, and that can create, drama and make it more fun and interesting. That's part of the gameplay. And then we have a signature loot mechanic, which is that all treasure must be carried. So when you're storming the dungeon, you have to use improvised containers, and you have some ability to put things on your person. But like if you find a solid gold cross and you want to bring it back and sell it, you have to carry it through the whole dungeon and then out at the end with you. And so the dungeons will be designed to make that easier or harder depending on what's in there. So you might be too heavy if you're carrying that equipment and you can't get back across, or you might need to throw it and have someone catch it and things like that. So we have some fun gameplay that we've prototyped that will basically
Carrying stuff together, like on a stretcher.
exactly wheelbarrows, improvised barrels, like random things. Yeah, so it basically just to make it so that you don't have like an infinite amount of pockets. You're just shoving stuff in like a normal. It's more realistic, and from the sense that you literally have to pick and choose. Like if you want to hold two swords and like set them down and then do stuff and then pick them back up, it's.
Can you roll it at the part of the recipe?
We'll see.
You glue them together.
So.
Fuse.
What other kind of inventory do you have?
Um,
Planning for it, maybe I should ask.
So almost everything is socketed. So basically you can have rings, necklaces, you have weapons, you have places to place weapons on your character. But beyond that, everything else is you have to carry
What's
it.
in front of you,
Yeah. So, and also we have a concept of equipped versus held, so that we have plans to do cursed and blessed items, and so if you actually equip it, now you're maybe screwed. So that means that basically picking up a weapon is a risk. You don't know, potentially if it's a good thing to use or not, and you have to weight that when you're playing the game to decide if it's worth the risk.
This is a genuine question. If you have like a knife or a weapon that's been stabbed into you, can you carry that?
Maybe.
Does that take a shock hit?
Sure. You just casually stab yourself full of knives to.
Yeah, like to carry extra weapons.
I don't know. We'll see.
You stab They don't know why they're bleeding.
Yes. We are deciding to, in lieu of one-time purchase or any microtransactions, all that, we're going to just do pure subscription. We will have a free tier that will be hybrid, peer-to-peer. Hybrid in the sense that we're using Loot Locker to basically manage loot tables of creatures and event types like drop rates, things like that. So that's still like what you gain from combat is all or random pickups are based on an external system. So that'll still have a cost to us based on the number of players, but it doesn't require like a server. But that also means that the client application isn't responsible for divvying up loot, which would mean people will cheat. So, but the higher end exclusive content will require subscription, and it will people playing in that method will get dedicated servers. And the idea being that, if you look at all of the MMO games that have come out in VR, I think half of them are dead now because they had a one-time fee and they basically spent all the money running server equipment and other things, CEO, whatever. But there's just, because of that model of one-time purchase, it just creates this end point where the game stops. And so we just want to avoid that from the get-go and figure out a way to basically just, because if nobody's paying us, we don't have to have hardware. Like, we can spin up hardware really fast based on player base. So that's a lot easier to manage from a small team with limited resources than just throwing everyone at it for free and hoping that you can pay the bill at the end. So, and then we have plans to do, and this is part of the reason we want to focus on PC VR also, is the ability to stream POV of the dungeon out to YouTube, Twitch, Meta, so that people can basically watch a group of people going through the content, and it can be a form of entertainment / marketing for the game itself. Sell ads in it or something, I don't know, we'll see. But basically then, you could end up being a professional player of this game by just having a big audience that wants to watch you play it. So that's a goal. I've done a bunch of work on that, recording POV and VR for various projects that we've done in the advertising space. So I have some experience with, capturing the content out of VR in a way that doesn't affect performance adversely, and then streaming it out. So, and this is just like some concept art for the carrying out your loot. So at the end, you basically have choices of things, and you don't know what's in it. And it's at the end, you crack it open, and you gain reward or not, depending on the randomness of what you grabbed.
You have to carry a briefcase out of the dungeon?
Well, you have to carry something, and it may just be like an item, but we're planning that like this is like there's like a vault.
I like the briefcase. I'm not knocking it.
Yeah. So this is like a vault, and it has these like things in it, and the idea being that there's limited time. Like there's a gate that's closing, and you're going in, and you got limited time to just grab a few things and get out. Otherwise, you get trapped in there.
Then the green gas comes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, it's designed to like create, an engagement point where people like are doing something frantic, because there's some looming event that's going to cause harm to them, basically, if they.
Use the briefcase as a weapon.
Sure.
Well, that was going to be my question too. It definitely needs to be, or at least block arrows or something with it.
Yeah.
As you're leaving, yeah.
Well, we have, again, thinking about all the ambitious things you can do, plans where, again, with carrying things as a combat mechanic, there could be enemies that also grab your stuff and run, so, that you could have something you really like and you have to set it down to do combat, and then like something comes and grabs it and runs off with it, so just possible things, right? Loot goblins. So, as a 20 plus year user of Unity, why switch to Unreal? And I personally, this is again my personal opinion, so and I'm not going to push this on anyone else. I'm just going to inform you of what I think. But I think Unity went rogue. Like they basically they felt that they had so much power that they just tried to like basically farm all of their users for cash, and I just don't agree with it. I've been promoting the product with the intention of like especially non-game use, like right using game development technologies for non-game uses, like for medical things, for business applications, like anytime where you need to have animation and sound and things like that. Like you could do that in C++, but game engines are already doing that, And just watching them like fumble through multiple attempts to like retroactively apply new terms of service and licensing changes to people who have already shipped products that have been in the market for years, and they're just like, now you owe us all this money,
Well, they did say industry is their fastest growing segment.
Yeah.
Since they get to decide.
Because they've decided that non-gaming use compliance is their method of effective extortion. They're going after everyone who's using it in a non-game way, and their solution is, yeah, we saw on your website you did this thing, and so you have 15 days to comply, or we're going to pull all your licenses. That's really shady, and I just don't agree with it. So at that point, I was basically like, and even during the whole runtime fiasco, this thing that snuck through that actually is the worst of the bunch is this non-game use. Like everyone it kind of went under the radar, and we've had multiple conversations about it, and you've been impacted by it. But I was just watching everyone ignore this line where they're basically just like, non-game use costs literally almost 2 to 3 times more, So you're looking at a $5,000 seat license instead of, the original 2,500 or whatever. And it's like, I could see if they did that and said, okay, and they tried to do this for the runtime fee. They said, okay, well, we'll keep it on the 2022 branch, and if you decide to use Unity 6, now you'll be on this thing. But they basically just went to everyone, regardless of the Unity version you're on, and they said,
They said you could use the license from those versions, but when we brought it up, they
Yeah.
just kind of ignored us.
so, and
The runtime fee thing was last straw for a lot of people.
yeah. But I mean, that did go away finally, but the thing that's still lingering out there is this whole, if you're making non-games with it, you now have to pay,
At any point,
3.
you may get a phone call.
And they can choose arbitrarily to decide whether it's your revenue or your client's revenue or all these other random things. It's whatever they can choose in their, yes, who they think they are. And you don't really have any leverage to fight against it. You just have to pay it or move. That's basically their stance, and I think it's bullshit. But so I decided that was the time. It's the time to evaluate our options, and this is about 2.5 years ago. I was already looking into things and basically just deciding, is it worth me relearning? Like the amount of time it's going to take to like, and I won't say if you're considering this, it's not insignificant, right? Relearning all of your skills in another engine. It's not possible, but it is going to take time because you're going to have to learn all kinds of new things. So, and I would say, was it worth it? Yeah. It's a different engine. It still has limitations, and there's things I haven't figured out how to do that I can do in Unity. But, for the most part, there's, it's a game engine. It does all the same things, right? So let's just figure out how to do that based on your skills and the things you want to accomplish. So, thinking about like VR dev in Unreal Engine 5, or as I say, fun building everything from scratch. Mostly from the standpoint that like if you're looking at the ecosystem in Unreal, and then there's a lot of stuff in Fab, but if you filter by VR, there's like a limited number of things. Like there isn't the like ecosystem and third-party support in the VR space that exists in Unity, and to the point that Meta themselves treat Unreal as second or third class citizen, and their own SDKs are not feature complete with what works in Unity. So you are automatically coming in at a disadvantage if you're thinking about, like, can I do the same things I do in Unity in Unreal? If you have the skills, yes, obviously. You have all the source code, you've got, there's, everything's there to do it, but it's just like, what is your investment of time required, in that, so. Meta has a UV5 fork that they've basically added performance optimizations and rendering things to make it more performant than the stock version of Unreal Engine. That requires you to compile it yourself, which is not hard, but it is something that most people would probably not want to do, I guess. It's not, I've done it now about 5 or 6 times. You need a massive amount of hard drive space to do it, because every time you do a full compile, you're looking at, especially if you have all the debugging stuff, you're looking at 200 to 700 gigs per build. So
Is that standalone specific? Your point there about performance?
yeah.
So have you switched away from it?
I have both operating, and there are some things performance-wise that are still worth having, worth the headaches of compiling it and distributing it to your team on your own. But for just initial dev, you don't need to. You can just use the existing binary version, and for the most part, you're going to not have the same performance, but it's functional, and you can work on stuff.
So, like, under what circumstance do you recompile? Is it like whenever there's a new version come in, or whenever you make any C++ changes, or what's the...
So it would be whenever there's a new version that you specifically want to support, or whenever there's a new version that Meta has, basically patched features from the latest point release into the meta fork. That would be where you would need to do a new compile, create binaries, and then distribute that to your team, basically.
And is there something, I'm just curious, like, do they not make a binary because people have different hardware? Like, I guess why does yours...
Well, so the terms, the licensing terms of Unreal Engine prevent you from distributing binary versions of the editor. So Meta can't compile it and just release it. Like, Epic does not allow that. There just currently isn't one. Occasionally you see them, and then they usually get taken down. Yeah. Go look. Trust me, I've looked. But yeah, it's specifically, it's like when you sign up for the GitHub repo for the Unreal source code, there's like this whole long agreement, and it specifically says in there that you are not allowed to distribute binary versions. The only official binaries come from Epic. So.
Is there like a golden best hardware setup for this? Like, you need 128 core CPU? Like, what's the
So their recommendation for compiling the engine is a Threadripper Pro, 32 core, 64 thread with 256 gigs of RAM and 4 terabytes of drive space. It's basically a $6,000 to $7,000 workstation. And I can compile it on my not that, but it does take 10 hours. So it's one of those things where if you were compiling it a lot, you would want a massive machine in order to do the compilation. And so they have specs listed on the documentation for Unreal Engine. They break down them the machines, but basically think that and they say that's the standard Epic development workstation, is this nearly mythical hardware that no one has in reality. I don't know. They should do a benchmark for how fast can you compile Unreal Engine. So the metaphoric also lags behind the official binaries by 2 to 10 months. It's all over the place. It all just depends on what's in the what's in the latest point release and what kind of problems it caused when they were patching it with their own updates for the platform. So currently, I believe 5.6.2 is out for Unreal Engine, and I believe that the Metafork is currently on 5.5.3 or something like that. So it's still the full point version behind, basically. And part of that is just because, you know, Epic isn't really focused on VR, so they're just adding all kinds of crazy stuff that, you know, works in AAA games and works on non-VR games, and Meta's kind of migrating their own changes into that as they push updated versions. So Meta still kind of treats the Unreal platform as a low priority, and so there isn't feature parity. So there's currently no multimodal support. There's trying to think of, you know, there's no avatars. There's limited character, like interaction, like their IK system for puppeting a character is limited on Unreal, and it uses some Unreal specific tech. It doesn't use the same exact SDK that they use on the Unity side, so there's just things that, you know, aren't there and don't work. And then again, just because not everything in Unity 5 is VR friendly, there's just, you know, you also have to walk the minefield of, can I use this in my VR game, right? Can you use Nanite and Lumen and all those things? And the answer is no, really.
I mean, I wonder, like, what are the things that require? I mean, I'm sure there's more things than just performance in the meta version, but like, I can imagine for Quest, for example, you can't do screen space things, like that kind of stuff. But for PC VR, is there anything besides just turning all the fancy stuff off? Like, what, like, I get it's something that I can see why you can do like weird custom stuff for Quest because that requires it's a weird tile render thing.
Yep.
But for just doing PC VR, is there anything that's different besides just making like anything that would be, you know, running at 4K or on a regular screen? Is there anything different about VR?
Yeah, you still have the issues that, you know, Unreal is primarily a deferred renderer, you know, and that's just way less performant in VR, you know, and so. And also, some of the features require the deferred render and don't work in the forward render. I mean, it has its own forward render, and it has a mobile forward render and a desktop forward render. And so, again, figuring out what actually you can use when you're targeting your platform is somewhat of a challenge there. But so, you know, but like you got to think that like Half-Life Alyx ran on a GTX 970. You know, so we have a whole lot more hardware to throw at it, and you can get away with actually using the deferred render with pretty good results, especially on NVIDIA hardware with DLSS and things like that. Like, you basically can use DLSS as your anti-aliasing, you know, instead of using something that's higher cost, because you're getting that from the driver and not from, you know, from shader tricks, basically, you know. So for our multiplayer stack, we're just using stock UE networking, and that's been working great for everything so far. We're using the game playability system, which is a beast. I probably have 6 or 8 months in learning how to use it, like reading every line of code and figuring out how to use it in multiplayer. But it does automate a lot of things from like, you know, basically if you want to trigger an animation and have it play across all the players in multiplayer, it automates all of those kind of things. So, you know,
third party, or is that something?
It's a first party. So it was part of their aborted game, and their fighter, what was it? Trying to think of the name of it. All the assets are currently in Fab. You can just download it all, basically. All the characters. It was sort of like that. It was a multiplayer, you know, basically like yeah. And then they just decided not to finish it, but they released all the assets, and part of that was the game playability system, which is actually all used in Fortnite. So a lot of the like core parts of, you know, the network stack on Fortnite is based on game playability system. So it just has traditionally had bad documentation. It's this really powerful system that also unfortunately requires C++ to use, because it's designed so that you extend it to you know, to create custom objects and and things that work for your specific setup, right? And there are some assets in Fab that let you basically use blueprints to do that same thing. Like they just created a template that wires up all the blueprint specific things and then exposes that to Blueprint so that you can basically use the gameplay ability system without having to use C++ 100%. It's actually not that bad. The bindings that you need to create manually are not that many. And then we're using Epic Online Services, so that's basically our lobby system. That's free, provided by Epic. It's cross-platform multiplayer. You can mix and match like Switch and other PC, any different platform within it. In our case, obviously, since it's a VR, it'll just be pretty much PC. But if we ever do, if there's if there's a newer released VR headset that has the performance level that we would need for our content, we would still reevaluate that, and it would still be an option to deploy to that platform. It does support host migration, although host migration in UE sucks. It's a good. In Unreal. The host migration in Unreal with Epic Online Services is kind of slow. Like, it's a limitation of the networking system, I think. I have yet to find one that anyone's workaround to try and get host migration to work properly it's been a challenge. The ones that have worked the best so far were ones where they literally were just like maintaining the state and all the clients, and that's fraught with its own issues with cheating and things like that. But that way, if somebody disconnects, it could recreate the game state and transfer someone. If you're doing a peer-to-peer setup, you can transfer someone who's currently still in the game to be the host basically and transfer the game state. It does currently work. It takes a good, like I said, 30, 40 seconds, and it doesn't persist game state at all. So you're still responsible for that on your own. So it's
What's it doing?
I don't know, but like with Photon, in Photon Engine has great host migration. Like, it's fairly seamless, but for whatever reason, that it's not a thing that currently I've been able to find any replicate. I haven't been able to replicate on the Unreal side. So, and then we're using AWS and GameLift for dedicated servers. So I have just a dedicated server build that we deploy, and then basically from the lobby you can create a session and you can join the dedicated server.
So how much does it cost to use AWS for that? Because we kind of looked at one of the projects we worked on a few years ago was the Treasure Stack game, and the people at Game Smarts wanted to use AWS for that. And their plan was to like put a Unity binary in an AWS thing, and it sounded like it was going to be real expensive.
It can get expensive.
Okay.
It's Amazon, so it's always hard. You use their calculator, and it's double what they say it's going to be, in reality. But because you're paying for your bandwidth, you're paying for file storage, you're paying for every little thing, and so currently we're using a free tier because we have 5 people accessing it. So I don't have a good gauge of what the final costs are going to be, for deployment, but. From our standpoint, I have a background in web development, so like I'm flexing that currently as doing all the back end development for getting all the server side stuff to working, and it basically could work anywhere, and there are probably another half dozen other options, and the actual build isn't much different. So it would just be API implementation for that specific tech stack, but the handing off the session and all that kind of stuff is fairly basically the same. So I don't know. I'm just using AWS right now because it's easy, and they have a generous free tier. So currently, it's not really costing us anything. So, but it's one of those things where in the future, I don't know, it could be really, really, really expensive. So.
Speaking of expensive, PG Systems has their ultimate UE5 compile machine.
Yes.
It has a 96 core. It apparently can compile it in 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
And it costs $60,000.
60,000?
Yeah,
So.
for
So you just have to decide if your 8 hours is worth $60,000. But if you do that like 2 or 3 times a week, you know, it probably starts to feel very valuable.
With a computer like that, you're gonna make it work.
Yeah. Again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're using Loot Locker, which is basically like PlayFab. So PlayFab is it's a content management system for games. Effectively, that's what it is. You can like create content that your game consumes, and you have this other interface that's web-based that lets you go in and tweak things. So if you have a loot table, you can put all the items in, you can create all their IDs, you can say like this is the drop rate, and you can create an event that's like on Thursday, the day before Halloween, we want to have the drop rate of pumpkins increase. You can literally just like create a thing and change the drop rates and then tell it when to deploy, and it's external from the game, so it allows you to like manage the behavior of the game without having to like recompile the game itself. And Loot Locker is basically the same thing as PlayFab. It just has a more specific feature set that's kind of more aligned towards specific kinds of games like RPGs and things like that. Has concepts of currencies and items and events and things like that. So I did start in PlayFab, and we've had a conversation about PlayFab for that kind of stuff. And it wouldn't be very much work to switch back to PlayFab from what I currently have, but both have an Unreal Engine SDK, so and they're both blueprints and C++, so you can basically just use it to.
Are you using that for persistent data, like player accounts and stuff like that, and
Correct.
inventories and things?
Yep.
Cool.
Is the world persistent?
The world is not persistent. The world is instance-based. And kind of our current take is that I have a picture somewhere of, well, we'll get to that. But I have this, so basically, I'll show you the picture. I'll call it out when I get to the slide, which is pretty soon. But basically, there's this like entity, we just call him the wise one. And he's like sitting on this dais, and he's got all these jars full of eyeballs. And the idea is that the eyeballs have seen the location of various dungeons. And so you can go up to him and you can basically pay to get access to a dungeon. He takes out an eyeball, he puts in this thing, and he opens a portal. And then you walk through into this dungeon, and then the portal's open for a limited amount of time. So you've got like a couple days basically to go through and clear it out and come back. And so it's the opportunity to like persist a little thing for a shortish amount of time, rather than having to force you to be like, oh, you're gonna sit down and you gotta go through all this content in this, this really short time span, basically. So it creates a push to come back, and do things, but it also, it's not a short-term thing. Like you don't have to like spend 10 hours in one day to get through it.
Can you bring him eyeballs?
What's that?
Can you bring him eyeballs?
You can. So you can take them from enemies and bring them back, and you can exchange them for other dungeons. So we have some fun things planned for that.
To unlock a new dungeon?
We don't have that figured out yet. But that's Bjorn. That's just Bjorn just like whipped out this drawing. I'll show you it when I get it. And he's like, "This is how it's gonna work." And I was like, "Okay."
I just like the idea that we have to decide if you're pulling out loot or eyeballs. Pickled eggs. Yeah, it's pulling out.
So just if you're looking for tools to help do VR development in Unreal Engine, you can look at the Meta UE5 iSDK. This is their interaction SDK. It exists in Unity also. I hope someday they have feature parity, but currently the Unity one does like 50,000 more things than the Unreal one does. So the Unreal one has no locomotion, for example. And if you go and you look at the Unreal Engine example locomotion project, it's from like VR era 1.0, and they implemented, it has snap movement and snap rotation, and they're not exclusive. Like they're just always both on at the same time. Like and it has like locked menus to your head, and like all it has, it's like terrible. It's like someone made it like a million years ago, and they've been carting it along, keeping it working in newer versions of UE, but it's not ever been finessed to be like, you know, what the expectations are of VR users in the modern era. So it's a horrible example. They should just really just destroy it at this point, because it doesn't really work and it's not very useful. But it does have the Meta ISDK does have hand tracking support. It has UI, so you can poke at things, you know, touch things. It has remote grab and, you know, controller-based and hand-based interactions. It just bizarrely doesn't have any locomotion. It just seems like a weird thing to be missing from an interaction SDK, but it doesn't even have teleport. It has nothing. So it's kind of bizarre. To me, at least it seems like the gold standard currently of VR is this VR expansion plugin, but it was originally for UE4. It's kind of been, it's prolifically updated. Like the second Epic releases, point release, this dude is like, here's the new version, you know, and he's constantly fixing. And they changed the full physics system in UE5 from UE4, and so we had to like redo all of the interaction stuff for that, and he's constantly tweaking it. It does support multiplayer, so you can, and when you pick up an object, it's doing all the networking stuff to pick up that object for everyone that's playing. It's just, I think the biggest negative of it is it has horrible documentation. It's literally just like, there's some ancient YouTube videos, and a few people have like gone through things, and whenever you release new features, he sort of casually talks about what things are, but when you install it, you're just like, how does this even work? Like it's not friendly at all, but it is very powerful. It is full source code, and it is free. So head-mounted VR is another one. It's on Fab. I believe they sell it also through Gumroad, but I've used it with good success. It is quirky. It has quirks, I guess. A bunch of people complain about it because if you ever get into their Discord or whatever, they complain that it just doesn't work good on Quest. And all of their troubles are because the demos were built for PCVR, and it's doing rendering things that don't, you know, it's using Cascade, like it's using a certain kind of shadow that works like garbage on Quest, for example. It's one of the volumetric shadow types, I can't remember. But like I was able to just like in an afternoon, just like turn off all the special features and get it to compile, and you have it run at 70 frames per second, constant, no problem. So it's none of the issues are related to the SDK or the interaction system or anything. All of the issues are just people are taking the demo, and the demo doesn't have content that's designed for Quest and saying that it's garbage. And it's primarily because they just don't have the knowledge to optimize the content. And he wasn't originally saying that it was specifically for Quest anyway, but it you know, the functionality that's there isn't platform specific, right? So it's just getting information from the motion controller and allowing you to interact with objects. And so if you can get around the whole, like if you have enough wherewithal to like take the demo and just go like, this content just doesn't work, you know, on the device, but all of the interactions, all the components, everything else works fine, it's actually a pretty good system. It's fairly inexpensive. I think it's like $100 or something. And it has fairly good documentation. This is one I've literally contacted these people, I don't know, every 6 months. They just completely ignore me. VRAF, it looks amazing. It's specifically for UE5. It uses like metahuman stuff. It has full body IK and interaction. And they're using in Wanderer the Fragments of Fate, which is out on PC VR, I think, on Steam, and then it's looming for Quest. So I don't know how well this system works actually in person on Quest, but their claim is that they're gonna offer it for sale for people to buy it to use. But it's been, like I said, probably like a year and a half or something, and I just remember periodically to send them an email, and they just never respond. So it's a thing that exists, maybe, and it's in at least one game, but mileage may vary there. This is an asset from Fab. This is Mimic Pro. It has a terrible name. My character interaction system is partially based on this. I actually worked with the dev of this to add just a crap ton of features, and my whole like IK override system is not part of this. It was added on top of this system. It's actually not that hard to add. If somebody was interested and you had this asset and you wanted to know how to do it, I would just give you the code if you wanted it. It's not nothing crazy. But it is designed to be, this one is animation from like waist down. So it uses just a standard locomotion system. So you have whatever your traversal animations are powering the lower part of the body, and then it's using IK on the head and the arms and hands. And then it uses the OpenXR finger position animations or direct controller input if you're using meta controllers. So when you touch a button, it will trigger the appropriate finger animation. Pretty cheap. It out of the box the hands are like this, which drives me crazy, but that's what everything is. And if you turn off the body, then you just have floating hands and you don't see the weird stuff. But it is a decent starting point. Like I said, mine is probably not anywhere near the starting point at this point, but it is, it was a good jumping off point, and it's full source code, so it's useful. Our assets are all rigged with the mannequin skeleton, so that way we could use all of the existing animations basically that are part of the Unity or the Unreal ecosystem. There's kind of two mannequins. There's the old UV4 mannequin, and then the new Manny and Quinn, which are their newer versions of that. And if you use a standard skeleton, like you can use all the control rig stuff that exists. You can use basically all the motion capture and animation libraries that are in the Fabs marketplace. You can just like transfer them onto the character, and they just work out of the box. This plugin is basically for Maya, and it allows you to take it has a character rigging system, so it does full skeletal animation, facial animation, and all the rigging associated with that, and then it will generate Unreal Engine control rigs for all the specialized controls. So you basically get a fully the kind of rig that an animator would want to use to control a character inside of Unreal at the end. And it's free to use, but they sell it as a one-time fee, as an indie of $750. You can download it 100%, and there's no restrictions on features. But in the event that you want to buy it, it's a one-time charge of $750, and if you're a studio, it's $3,000. So it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but it is absolutely amazing. It's constantly updated, and if you look at all the other options that are out there for trying to get a fully rigged character inside of Unreal, there's limited options, and some of them are not good.
How does in general working with assets and modifying them? One thing I first ran into is even a PNG isn't a PNG, right? It's like a Unity or it's a real file.
Yeah, everything's a binary asset. Yeah.
But how do you pull it into Photoshop, fix it, put it back? How do you even?
A lot of things you can just literally right-click at and export. Right in.
Export it, modify it, re-import it.
Yep. It's the weird way that it works. Even to the point where if you wanted to transfer assets to another project, you just you right-click in the folder and you go transfer, and then it can browse to another Unreal project, and then you can just check the boxes of other things, and it'll just merge those files into that project. So.
I'd say the standard is your source assets are outside the Unreal project.
Yeah.
Either in parallel.
And if you do, when you're doing project management, and if you start to put things into the folder, you'll get weirded out because there's just things you don't see. You won't see the main asset, but if you go to the folder, it's there. But the editor doesn't see it because it sees the version that it ingested, that it created from the original asset. So.
I mean, is there some standard workflow where you watch a folder and sync them or something?
Or? Well, the standard is that you've got your assets beside the project, and when you import it, you've created a link from where that source asset started to where it is now in your project. And whenever you update that original asset, it'll automatically detect that and import it back into the project. And you can also manually re-import. Like you can just click on the asset in the asset browser and tell it, and it'll bring back up the import dialog, and you can have it, reprocess something with different settings or whatever. You can do that. But I don't know. I haven't had too many problems with it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you said like if it upload, if you can link it, and then if you modify the PNG, it actually reloads. That seems like solves it.
Yeah.
I mean, the real difference is the actual binary thing that is going to run in your build is version controlled now. As opposed to Unity, where it's like, did you clear out your library folder? Oh, I do once a week. And then it's like weird garbage shit from 3 imports ago. It somehow makes it into a build, but not on my machine. So that's gone. But yeah, it's an extra step every time.
This is another asset that's super useful. It would work for Unity projects too. It's AccuRig. It's from the folks that make Character Creator, Real Illusion. But it's basically sort of like Meximo. It does you basically can import an FBX, and you can just put a template on top of it to line up where the bones are, and then it'll rig it automatically. It'll do all the weighting and everything. And actually, if you take the AccuRig rigged skeleton and run it through Advanced Skeleton, you can just convert the AccuRig directly to the mannequin skeleton. So then it'll come in. So you can basically use the tool to auto rig it, then use the other tool to just do an export, and then you have an asset, an FBX that will just work with any mannequin animation. And the AccuRig 2 is free. There's a version in the Real Illusion. I'm trying to think. I think it's Character Creator. There's a more advanced version of AccuRig that can do things like hands that have 3 fingers instead of 5, and solid objects instead of having them deform with bones. They can just be attached and sit. Some more complicated kind of skinning things, and it's soft bodies, so you can have a piece of cloth that moves, because you can put a bone on it and give it some physics settings, and it'll animate separately. And AccuRig 2 is free. It's worth totally checking out if you have needs for that. And I just have a couple. So I just have a couple extra videos at the end, just to as a part of this process with us is I'm again going through this journey of figuring out how to use this massive engine and all the functionality that's there. And I've built all kinds of crazy stuff, but I'm just trying to specialize my knowledge in this tool, kind of thing. So this is the facial animation rig in Advanced Skeleton. So what you do is basically, it has markers, and it's bone-based. And so the wizard basically walks you through it, and you just put the markers on the face. It automatically generates all the vertex bindings. It creates the control rig, and then you basically get a face that's fully animatable. And it's you don't really have to do anything except click on some spots where you want, where's the eyeball and where's this part of the face. And it will automatically generate all of the mouth positions for speaking and things like that. And, so again, even though it is, if you're looking at it as studio price, $3,000 is not terrible. Especially it's not monthly. It's a one-time cost. So it's not super crazy. If you're doing it as an indie, there's basically a threshold where you would need to pay, but for just testing and doing things, basically you can still use it 100% for free. So it does require Maya, which is also not free, but there are probably similar things that work with Blender and other tools too. But yeah, just as a part of having characters in VR is making them feel like they're alive, and so it's one of the things where just having facial animation is something that you just don't have dead faces inside of content, and so we're coming up with ways to solve those problems in our content pipeline. For AccuRig, so the nice thing is that our characters, we're using in VR, they're just Unreal Engine characters, so they can be used in non-VR use cases. So we just took literally the third-person demo, and this is just all of our characters rigged up, and this has got some soft body, so like his beard wiggles and like, you know, his hat jiggles and things like that. And so, and basically, you know, just showing that like the characters are using physics and stuff for like their basic interactions. And then for like our IK system, for the hands, you know, basically, you know, you can toggle on one hand, you can toggle on the other hand, and then it's still playing all the animation that would be controlling the hand, so, you know, it's mixing that with whatever the current state of the IK. And then you can just, as soon as you let go, you can basically go back to the animation as your fallback. And it's pretty neat because you just start wandering around and like your hands are moving when you look down, and it looks more like you're alive rather than just like, you know, but you still have the ability to just instantly take control of the hand and do something with it. So, and then in the animation blueprints, there's basically like animations can basically override a blend value to determine whether the IK is in control or whether the animation's in control. And then
How do you picture taking over IK if you're in the middle of like a sword swing or something like that?
I've done it, and it doesn't feel broken. Like it feels like plausible that you blocked something. The main thing is just like, you know, it has to basically recalibrate back to something sensible after the fact, but there's challenges, but yes.
So when you're doing like a sword swing or like an animation like that, like you're not actually swinging, you're
No.
triggering something?
In our current content, we're not using motion controllers as things that you swing. We're using animation. So we still have direct interaction for like if you want to pick something up. If you have direct intent where you want to actually do something that's you doing a thing.
Okay.
But like for combat, you can just hit the button and punch. So it's like, you know, think about like the Indiana Jones game that just came out. It's first person. You know, you can walk up to a Nazi and punch him in the face, and you sort of feel like you're in that kind of space, except you're in VR. You know, and it actually it doesn't feel terrible. You know, if you're a purist and you want to swing your arms, I mean, I'm taking that away from you. But what you're gaining is that when the sword hits something, it can stop, right? That's the thing that's current. Until we have force fields or other technology that doesn't currently exist, you know, it's a trade-off. And it's a test on our side just to figure out if that will solve problems of, you know, that are weird and immersion breaking, you know, when you're playing content. You know, you're expecting like when your sword hits something that, you know, it's going to stop, you know, especially, and what usually happens is that the enemy you hit goes flying. So they're directly impacted by your force, but you're just an immovable object that, you know, we're afraid to move because you might make somebody throw up, you know, if you move them back the wrong way, right? People who are sensitive to, you know, artificial motion and things like that. So, this is a test of like environment sensing. So basically, again, secondary animation. If you think about like Behemoth, right? If you play with throwing the knife, it's just an animation. Like it's just, the hands are just doing a thing. If you were trying to actually do that in reality, you know, you'd be disappointed by. But so we have, you know, a setup where basically as you're walking by a wall, like your hand can come up and just like park itself on the wall and slide. You know, so that your character is like aware of the things that are in the space and can interact with them without you just directly doing something. So it's something that you can set up on a per object basis. You control how fast the hand is drawn to a surface, and which hand. So you can have, you know, and it can be directional. So if you're facing one direction or the other, it'll use the appropriate hand to slide on the surface. And the interesting thing about that particular thing too is it also does make it so that like when you walk up to this lever, like the hand will just grab it, you know, and then you can pull back your hand or you can hit the button and interact with it. So there's a couple ways where you can transition from, hey, there's this thing that I can interact with, you know, to actually doing something. And an interesting thing about that is like if we decided to add some kind of accessibility, like you could play this game without having the ability to use a VR controller. Because you could just walk up to the object and then the hands can like sense that that thing's there and you can click a button to pick up an object. So it gives us the ability to like, you know, potentially have, you know, other people play it that maybe aren't capable of playing a fully VR game too. You know, it's something that we're, again, just experimenting with at this point, but I think that's it.
Press F. You promised a picture with eyeballs.
Picture with eyeballs.
It's on your website.
It is on our website. It's probably on the game page. The wise one. There he is. I have a better picture on my.
Does he have eyeballs?
I don't know. I don't know what's underneath that. I'll have to ask Bjorn. Under the hood are there eyeballs, or they just. Somewhere in my deck, I've got that as a background picture too. I just don't know where I put it. There it is. I'd have to edit the slide for you to see it, though. It's just subtly in the background. But yeah, any questions?
Here we go. So, the big part of your presentation right there in the middle is the Unity stuff. And so I know 2.5 years ago, things were a little bit different too. But what made you specifically pick Unreal Engine with some of the other options that were out there back then?
Feature set. You know, just basically having the, you know, it seemed like the number two, you know, kind of a thing. And so, and I would say it's still the number two. Like, it's not better than Unity, you know, in the VR side at least. Right? There are objectively things better about Unreal over Unity in terms of rendering technologies and things like that. And when you go down the rabbit hole of all of the features that are Unreal, it's kind of overwhelming. And if you look at like a lot of the stuff that was announced at the most recent UE Fest in Florida, where, you know, they showed all the stuff for The Witcher and all that kind of thing. Obviously, a lot of that doesn't necessarily apply to VR, but there are some crazy things like smart objects. If you get bored and you want to go down a rabbit hole, look up smart objects in Unreal Engine. They're pretty amazing in the sense that they basically are little objects that you instead of building an AI that does a thing, you can like put the AI logic into an object.
It's
And
the equivalent of Sims. So the object broadcast, like, hey, I can do this thing.
I can do a thing, and when the character walks up to it, it'll just start animating and doing a thing. And it has a concept of slots, and it has a concept of being occupied. So, one of the examples I saw was they had a bunch of teleporters, and they had a bunch of AI-based agents that were walking on a nav, on a nav mesh. And when they got near these teleporters, they would just walk up to it, and then they would stand in place, and then the next one would come in, and it would choose a different one because it knew that the first one was occupied.
So
And like,
how I would, you've seen games like Dishonored that have like AIs will run over to a security alarm.
yeah,
So that if you're using like a utility AI, that object could have like, hey, I'm an alarm, and that alarm could say like, I have a value of 1, so come over and use me. And as soon as somebody's like in transit, like, oh, when I get over to this alarm, I will press this, and then all the animations, all of that is baked into that object. So
Yeah.
so the AIs don't have to carry all that AI or that,
Yep.
that animation and all that logic.
and then you can just like move that object over here, make a copy of it, and then you've now got a second one that can be used in that way. It's pretty crazy when you start to wrap your head around like what you can do with it. And so they in the example that they did for like The Witcher, they had like in the town where all the people were, they had smart objects set up for like the stalls. So like a character would like come over and pick up an object and start to like, interact with another NPC about what that thing was doing. And instead of the traditional way, which is where you would like build some kind of crazy logic on the character, they would give it that ability. There are these standalone things that can do communication and basically create these islands that are, super flexible for creating that type of interaction. So, I don't know. Like, I think if you're making games, maybe just use Unity. If it does all the things you want to do, But from my standpoint, I just I wanted to look at alternatives and go ahead.
So talk to me about iteration time. You want to ability or tweak something. How
So it all depends on what you're doing. You know, like in the case of like if you're using gas, all the workflows are primarily editor based. So you can just like go in and tweak a bunch of values and hit run, and you can just test out changes instantly. If you were working in a team and you had C++ code, that's where it starts to get more challenging, because now you have to compile your source, your module, whatever you're using for your code that's part of your game process. And it's a little challenging compared to like just in time compiled code like in Unity, where you can just hit run and everything's just awesome, But if you were to write a C++ plugin in Unity, and be making changes to that while you're still writing C++ code that interacts with it, you'd still have some of the same challenges. It's just that the workflow is intentionally based on C++ in this case. Like, it's more the focus, and ideally you would write core things in C++ and expose them to Blueprint, and then write binding things in Blueprint, which is not how everyone uses Unreal, but it's the most efficient way.
I mean, like, what's like the scale of it? Like, so let's say I have I have 200 game scripts for my game. Is it like if you don't break them into modules, it's just like it's gonna take like 20 minutes every time you recompile, or what's the?
Ken?
Well, yeah, just like what's the, I'm trying to, like what's a reasonable scale? Like I have I have a regular size game, there's 200 scripts, maybe 100 lines each. Like, is that already like you gotta do crazy things to make it even reasonable? Or
I probably that level wouldn't be complicated. No.
A minute, 10 minutes.
I mean, for just the base compile, I don't know. Like, again, if you have the target spec machine, you can compile the whole engine in 10 minutes. So, but like when I'm, like when I recompiled like a full module that's maybe like 20,000 lines of C++ code, it's a minute. It's nothing crazy. And you can do hot reload, so you can basically have, when you make a change, it will just recompile the part that changed, And it's a little flaky sometimes, like it will crash the editor and sometimes things like that. It's not a foolproof workflow, but and in fact, if you look at like a lot of tutorials where they are doing C++ programming, the first thing they do is turn off hot reloading, because it's more stable to not do it, basically. It depends on your proficiency in C++, I guess, and what you're trying to do. But
You can't really change classes and hot reload. You can change the content of classes.
yeah, there's some weird quirks where it just does bad things. But
Well, like, you found the most expensive thing you can buy. There's a sweet spot that's real reasonable, like an i7, 32 gigs of RAM. We rebuilt an engine in like 2.5 hours, and the project was a few minutes. And it was finished. And you don't rebuild every time you change a script. You recompile that script.
it is weird to be like, here's a new version of Unity I made for you, team. Like that's not a Unity thing, right? So, but in Unreal, that's a part of the process, and it's not horrible, but it is something new to deal with. But
What are you guys using for source control version?
we are using Git currently,
Fair enough.
which
It works.
is not my
No,
favorite.
No, it works.
I would prefer to actually use Plastic, which is now Unity source control.
Yeah.
But I digress.
I have another question, which is either a really good question or maybe is really dumb. How are you handling in Unreal? What is your replacement for set active pulse?
On just like a game object where you would just like, you have a thing sitting there that
You want it in the scene, but you want it.
you don't want it running.
Yeah. How do you do that in Unreal? I'm saying it because I never figured it out.
Yeah.
And everything I looked at was like, oh, that's just not a thing you've got to conceptually redesign everything you know about all of humanity in the world.
It would be easier to spawn the object when
Jesus
necessary.
Well, okay. I was hoping you had it.
You mean like have an object in your scene and just turn off the game objects if it's not
Yeah.
there, or?
Yeah, like, set active, parentheses, false.
Yeah, okay.
Or you have a scene that's got a bunch of deactivated objects
Yeah, just because you have blow.
that you just want to enable and disable.
Is your object like logic, or is it some?
It could be something that has, it could be something that has logic on it. It could be like one of these agents or whatever you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
it's got the behavior script on it itself.
You technically have, if you have code that's running in the dreaded update, which you shouldn't do, right? That's the bad no-no. You can disable that, and you can disable rendering. That would effectively be the same thing. It'd be a game. It'd be an actor in the project that's logic is disabled and its rendering is disabled. That's effectively what a disabled game object is.
Well, I don't know. This is maybe bad practice, but I built all of my UI systems around, setting objects active or inactive, and
But that's because of Unity. It's just the.
That's what I'm saying. No, that's like it's a different way of thinking. Like you
Yeah.
have to change your whole approach to the way
It's
that
there but not there, yeah.
like the way you design your scene around.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just turning off the renderer, but oh shit, I forgot about this other thing that I didn't disable also because I can't see it anymore.
The colliders, yeah.
Why can't I move anymore?
Why are the build so big? Oh yeah, we left the other version of the level in there.
Why would I move over here? Does this stuff happen?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe like the equivalent would be like, how can I have something in memory so I don't have to load, like I want to turn something on at some point, but I certainly don't want to load it from disk at that critical point. I want it in memory and ready to start to be ready to go without having to load hit disk. Like what do you do?
Well, the thing about that would be, if you're talking about UI, like Unreal has a UI system. Their widget system do have concepts of, you can have a widget stack that basically is not rendering. And you can basically throw a new widget onto a stack and have that be the widget that's now currently rendering. So that workflow is different than it is in Unity because Unity is all game objects, right?
Yeah.
But the UI system in Unreal is already designed for, basically you can create a UI that has all the elements already there, and then you can just turn things on and off. So, it just wouldn't work as well in the concept of like, an interactive actor in the scene is that you're trying to disable its rendering and processing.
Well, the closest
That's
thing
different.
I came for like things that were in the scene but didn't have logic on them was to put them all in a sub-level and then enable or disable that sub-level.
Yeah.
But it's a whole different level of like organization that you have to.
Yeah, I think
you can't
with
improvise your way through it.
widgets and widget blueprints, using the stack would be your way to handle that for UI.
Okay.
And there is there's a plugin. It's part of core of Unreal. That is it's an enhancement for the UI system that basically creates two things that are super useful. One is the concepts of these stacks, and then it will automatically set up the input bindings for UI so that you can basically say, when you change the input method to like a Steam controller or to an Xbox controller, it'll automatically swap like the binding icons, and it'll change things about, so basically your UI, if you have like little helper graphics that tell you like, press X, that I'm trying to think of what the name of it is on the top of my head. I'm just spacing, but it's part of the UI system. But basically at that point, you have the ability to have, using widget stacks, basically, you can just like throw, so basically it's like a container.
Yep.
And then there's a concept of whatever's currently active in that container, and it's called a stack, basically. And so there's just, it's basically, they basically came up with a way to make the UI system, because if you didn't do that, if you didn't use this specific plugin, you'd have to write all this code yourself to do the same thing. And so they basically came up with a plugin that automates the UI system from a standpoint of, changing input, adding, and removing UIs from the screen, and keeping them hot so that you can literally swap things out in and out instantly.
Are you guys using a custom you also using anything from the asset store or from the Unreal store?
Currently, two things: Mimic Pro, but like I said, I've heavily modified it at this point. And what's the other thing?
So how do you get those things into your custom engine?
So they're just modules. They're Unreal Engine modules. So
You
you,
have like a bog standard version of Unreal installed so that you can access it.
well, you can extend the custom engine with modules. So you just there's a specific folder in the Unreal project where you can just like transfer custom mod. You put a custom module in, and then when the engine loads, you can go into plugins and you can just enable it. So basically, you have the option of like literally writing your own systems as modules, so that you can create like islands where like this is the whole system for this specific thing, and that way.
Under the Unity package.
Correct. Yeah. And the basic setup of customizing, Unreal is based on the module system, and every plugin that you see in the plugin manager is a module. So it's just the way that you do that. You don't have to. You can just put C++ code in your project, but then the bigger that gets, the looming overhead that creates as you flush out a final project at the end, versus just testing things.
Yeah, in terms of like the recompiling time, I never found that to be that much of a problem, honestly.
Yeah.
But like testing in VR, so you've got a project that's already compiled, and you make one change and you want to rebuild it. I thought it was like around the same time as
All of my EOS code is in C++ with just a little bit of binding in Blueprint, and I don't know, it's a few thousand lines of code, and it's.
Yeah, unless you're changing a whole bunch of lines of data, it goes pretty quick.
And honestly, if you know anything about C++ and you look at C++ and UE, they have so many macros and so much automation, it's not really like C++ anymore.
Well, the description of the C++ project, though.
Yeah.
It's like Unity script, JavaScript.
But you do have to learn, UE-isms in terms of integrating things into C++ code. But it feels like, to me, it feels like scripting. It doesn't, I have bad nightmares of old school C++. But so right now everything's just state trees, and we're not using AI yet for anything crazy. I mean, you can consider a state tree, state machine be AI, I guess, at a very low level, but they're not smart yet. Let's just say, because no, not yet. So we're like at this point we have networking. You can pick stuff up and move around, and multiple people can be in the same space. And so we're basically getting all the core pieces in to start now getting gameplay working. And so over the next probably 6 months, that's going to be building out all the like systems that allow you to pick up your loot and carry it through the dungeon, kind of thing. So.
You can use this gameplay for the location-based part.
If you we're all at the same place. Yeah, there's no reason for it wouldn't work. I mean, other than the whole colliding into people, aspect of being in the same space.
Yeah, we tested it.
Use your gameplay for the location-based
Yeah.
system.
That's not our intent and not our focus at all. It's just in my head, it's like you're at home, your friends are at home, and you're all playing together in your own space, But we'll see. If it makes sense to have a co-located space. We've done a bunch of testing with co-located stuff, and it's fun. But
What do you guys think in terms of you've got 5 people in your party and then one person drops out and you're in the middle of some shenanigans? How's that going? You never know.
well, when the person right now is the master server, you are shit out of luck because everything shuts off.
That was the same thing when we did Puzzle Box Park. We were building a Normcore.
Yeah.
Whoever was the first.
Who's
person
ever the
in,
server. Yeah.
They were person 0, and everything synced to that person, including the video play times of the videos. So
on dedicated servers, it's not a problem. It's fine. But if you're doing peer-to-peer, it's.
I think the most important question. So your Triple Goat Studios, is that
Yeah.
right? But there's 4 people. So
Yeah.
there's not
Well,
5 players.
So
Yeah, that's even better.
if you notice, there was 3 people at the top and 1 person at the bottom. So the triple goats are the 3 people
How,
at the
how
top.
do you feel about that?
I don't know. But it's Thomas's son, so I'm sure he just had to deal with it. I didn't pick the name either. So Thomas picked the name, and so he intentionally slighted Aaron. I don't know.
I mean, is
That wasn't the intent, obviously.
Is there some kind of like a middle period where like if you like survive for a year, you become the fourth goat?
Sure, something. Yeah.
It's 3 goats and a kid.
Nice.
What's the environment that you're in?
So our first dungeon is called the Crypt of the Mountain King, and it's kind of like a dwarven inspired, like lots of rock and stone and metal stuff. And we have like a full. So basically, our plan is that, probably around this time next year, we'll have a playable demo that will be multiplayer, 5-player. I don't have any with me, and again, like we're still building out gameplay, so like we have interactions that work by yourself, but like the full-on multiplayer interaction, that's like still that's being done right now. Like I said, what's that?
Locomotion, you just walk around with the...
Yeah, we're using analog stick. So you basically are controlling. So there's a locomotion setup. It has like jump, run, walk, crawl, crouch, and you can basically, if you hold down the right stick, it crouches. So you don't have to physically crouch. It's like just based on the stick. So you could sit in a chair and play it basically. Left stick is full move. It's 8 ways movement. And then, yeah, isn't it 8 ways? Forward, backward. Yeah.
Why 8-way now?
Because that's just the standard multi-direction character input in Unreal. There's.
Okay.
Yeah.
You tested it with your Omni.
I don't have it anymore. I sold it.
Oh no!
Yeah, I got rid of that thing way like.
What?
I made a profit on
You
that.
still sell it? Yeah.
I got a hell of a deal from the Kickstarter. It took forever, and then Zach and I got it working, and then it was maybe like a couple weeks later I had it sold. I've been debating so the new Omni it solves some of the problems that the first one had, which is that the first one, if you're not aware, so the VirtuX Omni is a 360-degree treadmill, and it has this big giant ring around you. And so when you're playing a game and you like want to do this, you can't, because you're sitting in like a belt that's like tied to your hips, and you're locked onto this bar. So you physically can't crouch at all. And then you can't actually reach, because like half the time you move your hands, you hit this bar, So it was like, the concept was interesting from a standpoint of like trying to keep you standing on top of this, sliding surface. But it limited the kinds of gameplay you can create with it, because your body's unable to move in certain ways, So their new one is an arm with like a backpack. And so you put it on, and then it's supporting you, but then you can basically go like this, which is the thing you can't do in the old one. And then the other option is the Cat VR, which is also a kind of a pedestal thing that slides up and down that lets you, that one you can crouch on as well. But I've debated on looking at getting a newer one, but I think the thing that still keeps me from doing it is when I look at the foot tracking, it's all garbage. Like the one on the Omni is like, it's like the optical mouse ball. Like when you move your foot, it's just sliding. It doesn't know where your foot is. So it just, and it has like a weird, and this is the same issue I had with the original Omni, where it was, the threshold of movement was really janky. So like you would have to move really hard, and when you would slow down, you would just stop. So like it didn't really have a good way of like detecting your body moving.
That was at the hardware level.
Yeah, at the hardware level. And that is why I got rid of it. Because I was like, because we switched to using Vive trackers on the feet. And at that point, we could literally you could know exactly where your foot was. And it worked actually pretty well. But that was like, added on top of all the other stuff. And I don't know, it wasn't good.
Yeah,
It was a good experiment, and I didn't lose any money in the scope of doing it, but you know, I wouldn't say that it was a good product at all by any stretch of the imagination.
Do you think this is a cover band or is this karaoke?
I'm gonna go with cover band.
I think I said that too, but then I was like, there's no way.
I'm pretty sure that was Backstreet Boys.
Oh, the authentic. Yeah. That's what they sound like.
They got one of them.
How big are your server builds for your dedicated server?
Well, right now they have no graphics in them. They literally have only network logic, and they have the Loot Locker SDK and the AWS GameLift SDK. And I want to say, I don't know, they're like 300, 400 megs. They're not too bad. It's all logic, so there's no assets.
Did you have to fight with it to get it that small, or was it more or less
It wasn't terrible.
not terrible?
Yeah. But there's like, if you leave all the default plugins on, they're big.
Right.
But if you have to know like the things you absolutely minimally
Yeah.
need to have, and you just turn everything else off, and then that just is anything. Like if you're building for Android, if you're building for iOS from Unreal, if you just leave the stock plugins on, your builds are going to be massive because there's just so many modules you're not even using that you compile. So.
We had a lot of fun optimizing the network
Yeah.
for what needed to be done locally versus, and we ended up offloading a lot of stuff locally so that the data would be,
I watched a YouTube video where a guy took this, like, basically the third-person demo,
okay.
and when he compiled it, it's like a gig or something, and he got it down to like 20 megs.
Wow.
And he's just turning things off and just, so that just shows like
That's
where,
pretty good.
yeah. And so if you're targeting like mobile builds, right? If you're just leaving everything on, the builds are just massive. And but at the same point, if you turn off something that's needed, then your app doesn't run. So it's like.
Yeah. It was a really interesting experiment to say, okay, what do we need? What needs to be actually networked, and what can we fake?
Yeah.
And then we found out that almost everything can be faked.
Yeah.
And including, locations of some things
Yeah.
in the environment that.
And the other thing that, if you're doing that, like one thing I really like to do is use animation, and then just sync animation.
We did a bunch of that. It was just
Like if you have like a bunch of turtles in a circle, you just have like it periodically posts out where the turtle should be.
Yeah.
Like where in the animation timeline. Like it's just like a number between the length of the animation where it currently is, right?
Yeah.
Then you just periodically update that, and then everything's synced.
Yeah, you don't know the place, right?
If it's something you interact with, then it's more challenging. But
Yeah.
if it's just visual, you can get away with lots of things. Video is the same way. You can just sync the time.
You just sync the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm still just trying to comprehend, like, can you not have things, I mean, except for maybe like the widgets, a specific stack thing for UI or whatever, but like in general, how do you have things in memory but not live in the scene yet? Is that not a thing?
I mean, you can.
Can't worm for that one.
Yeah, I mean, you can instance an actor. Just like you can create you can instance a prefab in Unity.
But it's on.
Yeah.
So like, how do you?
And like you were saying, you can use sublevels, and you can unload and load sublevels.
Okay, so if you want to have something where it's like a really heavy thing, and you want to like not have to have it load from disk right at the moment it needs to appear, you have to do a sublevel.
You don't have to.
Well, how do you turn it off? How do you not? If it's not memory, it's a disk.
Instantiate it, just like on Unity.
Okay, so you have it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a change in approach that
Yeah,
you stub your toe on when you start.
and if your object is just heavy rendering, you can just disable rendering.
Sure. So I suppose like a very common thing in Unity is to pool things, right? Like you instantiate a bunch of stuff and turn it all off.
Yeah.
Pool
And depending on what you're doing, you'd still need to pool things and then render.
But
It'd be the same.
my understanding is you can't do that. If you can't instantiate it and turn it
You can.
off, then you can't pool it. I don't understand.
You can disable your logic, you can disable your rendering,
Okay.
You can reset it.
References to allow stuff to be purged. It's got more control.
So it's like the equivalent of just like having a script in Unity that like finds all your components, turns them off one at a time, as opposed to deactivating the object.
I mean, that specific thing isn't there from Unity, but all the functionality and more is there in a different way.
turn off the root and have all the children disable automatically? No, I don't think so.
So I'm just thinking, like, for example, like our player object has like 200 scripts on it basically. If I wanted to pool player objects for some reason, how would you do that?
You want the logic to stop or the rendering to stop?
Everything. I mean,
So you want to disable the model behavior, like disable just the script itself, and keep the game object active?
no, I'm just saying in Unity, I was just deactivate, right? Which standard, you just deactivate the root, it's gone.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you can't do that in Unreal. So would you need to turn off every single script one at a time to get the equivalent behavior?
I don't think so.
That's a good question.
But there isn't one is enabled checkbox. There's API calls
Yeah, you have to do a bunch of things.
for networking, for rendering, for if you're using blueprints or whatever to make sure logic doesn't fire. It's just more specific. I'd say overall it's designed for teams with skills, as opposed to Unity's kind of turnkey for people that are beginning. And I would say the same about.
It sounds exactly right, though. Yeah.
I would say the same for the approach that Meta took. Their stuff bolts on to the existing Unreal VR and doesn't step on its toes most of the time, so it's missing a ton of shit. Yeah. But then on the other hand, you download Unreal Engine and do an OpenXR build that runs on PC, and build an Android, deploy to Quest, and it runs without any plugins.
The one thing I haven't figured out how to do in Unreal versus Unity is on the rendering side, I've done a bunch of things in Unity where, like stacking cameras. Like if you're using the built-in render pipeline, you can basically just if you put two cameras on top of each other, it will like render them over the same buffer basically. And if you're using URP, there's a modifier on the camera that's like a stack, so you can add another camera that will get rendered composite over top of the renders. And so a use case for that was basically like we did this app for Caterpillar, and it has this crazy 2D UI that's over top of a 3D world. And so all the isometric weird 2D stuff is rendered in one camera, and all of the 3D stuff is rendered in a second camera, and then they're just stacked on top of each other. And we use like the FOV of the camera to like basically make it so that the object that's moving in the 2D space like looks like it's in the 3D space, so when it moves over to the side. But we did that because like there was a desired animation effect where like there's a stack of blocks and they rotate and reveal like the buttons that are interactive in the UI. But the thing that sits on top of the UI is this like 3D object, and so it's moving between like these two different FOVs in this way. That's when you look at it, it's seamless, and you can't tell the difference. Like it looks like it's plausibly moving. And I've talked to like multiple people on the Unreal side, and they're just like, got nothing. Like you'd have to modify the renderer, I think, to do it.
Yeah, sort of like Meta did for their composite
Which is
depth map.
possibly that the Unity way is literally just like they created a custom behavior. It's not like a normal, it's convenient, and I've used it a bunch of times, but I have not been able to find that equivalent thing in Unreal. Because I was just thinking, like, if I was going to port content I've already made, right? All the different tricks that I've done, I'm like, can I do that? And how would I do that in Unreal? And like, that's one I'm still stumped on. I don't have a good way. And
I mean, maybe not to like dig up the set active question again, but like that's like a really Unity specific thing that you need to do because instantiating things is really expensive. So you can't just like instantiate something to turn it on and destroy it to turn it off because it costs too much. Generally, like if it's just cheaper to do in Unreal, maybe you don't need to do that. I like Unity projects are the only place I've ever done anything like that. In other projects, I just just don't call the code that if you want to make it not update or not do whatever, you just don't call that code when it's not running, or you don't render the object, or you don't whatever. I don't know. It feels like a very Unity specific thing in terms of like it. And if that's like how you think about how to make it, like it seems like a problem.
So I guess then you wouldn't be fluid, right? You just always instantiate.
I don't know. instantiating things is more efficient, like why, you don't necessarily need to do it. So, but I mean, I've never used Unreal to know if that's the
Yeah.
case or not, or if instantiating things is way more expensive. Who knows? But
Someday I'll be able to tell you.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of like, you have to disable the renderer, you have to disable the, like, whatever it is about it if you want it active in the scene, but you don't want it to be there. But it is a complete, like, that one
It's usually you're disabling.
That was the biggest conceptual change.
You're removing a collision channel from that object. You're
Yeah.
disabling the renderer, and you're suspending its logic.
You're teleporting it to a million.
I mean, maybe it's like another example that's like, like something that just you can't do in Unity. It's like, how do you pause a game in Unity?
Times 1 million.
How do you pause a game in Unity?
Out of sight,
It's out
out of
there in
mind.
space.
You want to send it far enough to get floating point errors and then bring it back home.
So back to your project. That's not a solution.
Yeah, so I mean, and test it.
Yeah.
Does UDA have soft references? So you can load onto this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a challenge and a difference you have to get used to in Unreal, because if you start using blueprints and you're referencing classes, the second your code instances, it starts loading all kinds of stuff that, even though it doesn't exist yet, you haven't actually put the object on screen, but your code is basically telling it that you need to load all these classes into memory the second the application starts, and so you have to use soft references to prevent that from happening. So it's just wrapping your head around the quirks of
Yeah, pick a flavor of quirk.
yeah.
Question, are you going to do any kind of like demo or alpha release like early on? Because I'm so eager to try it out,
Yeah, so we are, like I said, in probably around this time next year,
Okay.
there will be a playable demo. We're going to roll.
All right, I'm adding it to my account.
Okay, you can call me on that. It may be sooner than that, but I'm just
Sure, yeah.
covering the base, because the other thing is like, all of us have jobs, all of us have families, like this is like passion project, right? So we have resources that we're devoting to this. Like Bjorn has hundreds and hundreds of hours in creating art. So, but no one is paying us to do this. So it's a primarily, at least at this point, a thought experiment, right? Like, can I do all these things, right? And also, simultaneously, the best way to learn something is to actually have something that you want to do with it, right? Now, you can watch all the YouTube videos and you can learn all the things on their own in islands, but actually putting them into something and making something that works is, in my opinion, the best way to build something and learn at the same time.
I think I heard you talk about this concept of like motion controls to animations in a VR game like
Yeah.
ages ago.
Yep. The original version I did was in Unity.
Unity prototype of that concept?
I do actually. And so I've done in that one specifically, it has pushback, which I think is really cool, but again, it's not for everyone. So it's a sword, there's an NPC you fight a sword with, and you're doing locomotion-based, animation-based attacks. So when your sword's hit, there's force that is pushed, and you go sliding backwards. And to me, it feels really cool, but again, it might make somebody vomit, But it's just one of those things where it's we have this the golden rules of VR is you just don't do all these things, right? And I think that there's room to experiment still, and see if that's still the case. And it's different for different people, right? So
I think RJ has proved all of those wrong.
I mean, Stabby is flying through the air and random madness. It's got comfort settings, right?
And then RJ showed up and was like, no.
Did Meta ever push back on that? Did they just you just can't do any of this? Did they ever?
No, because I mean at that point, Gorilla
Okay.
Tag was very popular.
All right.
Yeah, I don't
They fought the battle for you.
Yeah, it's like once like Robotech is like out the door for like any sort of like fucking system to like, as long as like no one like actually throws up like
Yeah, the Alien VR game that came out, that has a mix of animation kind of based things. So that's kind of if you're trying to like get a if you were looking for something to test, to try and like just using animation to be part of the control the character, like is that cool or not? That's one that actually does some interesting things. That's obviously built with. I think it's built with Unreal actually.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah.
Maybe a question for RJ, like, is it known, like, are children who grew up with VR, like, immune to VR sickness? Like, is it like a new old age in VR?
That's a good question. I don't think it's statistically doing
Yeah.
been done on it, but I mean, personally, I have like a couple kids kind of in that like age group of targets nowadays, and like
I Am Cat. Are they an I Am Cat?
they are in the Road Garden Gorilla Tech knockoff.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah, are there kids that get sick looking at their phone on cars? I would have as a child. I mean, and still do. Like I got like 13 seconds before I'm mouth watering, ready to go. Yeah.
I mean, it's not even phone, like reading, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, like, who reads now? You read on your phone. You might have a book on your phone. Can you read a book on your phone in the car? For long as 13 seconds.
I read a lot of documentation, but I don't read a lot of books. But I listen to a lot of books because I can do other things when I'm listening to a book, but I can't read a book and do other things at the same time. It's just,
I was just wondering about if motion sickness, not just VR,
yeah.
but like in cars. My kids got past it. They don't have the trait that I do to very motion sick very easy. And I'm pretty sure they just got past it.
I was gonna say, I don't think it's a thing you just get past.
No, but you can. It's just if you're able, like
The critical period for developing crazy VR, like,
you have to teach yourself that you're not actually getting sick, and it's a difficult thing. But if
But
you're
why
young
did our
enough,
generation not develop that from, like playing Game Boy in the car or something, right?
Yeah.
because you didn't have batteries. The batteries. That thing was blowing jet. Yeah, it's waiting for the streetlight shining on it.
I'll commit to this also. Like I will try and prioritize getting the combat and like character controller system working in a way where I can just demo it to here, and we'll bring it in that way and get some feedback on.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Do it.
It doesn't have
Shared space.
in shared space. Yes.
All right. Well, this is probably a good time to wrap up. Let's hear from Matt. And thanks to everybody on the stream for watching. And before everybody gets all loud, let's see a show of hands of who's going across the sidewalk to the restaurant bar. Don't move. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So whoever gets over there first, 16, maybe outside, if wherever they want to put us, it's a big group. They'll be flustered, but they'll have space. So cool. Thanks.
I'll just say it's gonna be loud.
That's a good point.